It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jenn Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Hello and welcome to Countywide. I'm your host, Jenn Cohen. Today we're talking with firefighter Marc Howard from the Sedona Fire. You can check out sedonafire.org. There's a great website, lots of stuff about being fire-wise, about community cleanups, about all the information you're going to need to know about. Today we're talking about drones, the use of drones for smoke checks, for hikers lost in the woods, any sort of accident, any sort of incident that's going to happen. These are this eyes in the air. It's very cool, Marc. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing this.
Thanks for having us.
Now, first thing, a disclaimer, this is not a toy. You cannot go to Hobby Lobby and buy this. This is amazing. So tell us, we call these drones.
Correct.
But that's kind of layman's terms.
It is, and we refer to them, we call that, hey, can someone go get the drone? We have an incident we'd like to use it for. The regulatory term would be an SUAS, or a small unmanned aircraft system. So that would be any remotely piloted aircraft such as this that weighs less than 55 pounds. So there's federal aviation regulations, so rules that the federal government and the FAA have set out that govern the commercial and governmental use of drones, and those fall under Part 107 of those regulations. So currently we have 5 pilots, myself included, and we are all certificated, meaning we have a license, if you will, under Part 107 to fly these under a commercial, under a governmental operation. And then this particular drone, the one we have here, this one was actually donated to us by a citizen. I don't know the exact background of how that came to be, but it was a donated drone. And currently we use this particular one as a training model. It's basically, this one's basically a flying GoPro, but the reason we use this particular one for training is you can see some of these black dots here, here on the side. So this one has some sensors in it that the theory is it will not let you crash it into an object.
Right, in theory.
So, in theory. we don't want to intentionally test that theory, but it will stop basically 8 to 10 feet away from an object. It has limitations on the camera, but having this and having the other one it's a little more expensive model that we procured about 3 years ago, we entered into a beta test program to see, is this something that we find viable? Does it provide any value to us? How does this help us or not help us, kind of thing? And we determined that it does. And then we identified some shortcomings in those particular platforms, and we currently have a budget request in to procure a much more expansive, much more expensive, but much more capable system.
Right.
So
okay, so we talked about how this one is around $1,000.
Correct.
For one of these. The one that's in the shop that didn't come, that's bigger, right? How much is that one?
That one, when we bought it 3 years ago, was about $5,000 with the camera that's on it. It's still a fixed camera, doesn't have zoom, but it can fly longer, faster.
Okay.
So.
And the new one that you're looking at getting, that the request is for?
So the entire kit, so the budget proposal that I submitted was for a little over $30,000. That includes some management software on my end to manage the pilots and the reporting requirements and the video and some other regulatory background stuff, administrative stuff.
Okay.
The biggest bulk of the price of the system that we requested is actually the camera system, so the payload. So the new system that we're looking at, it's a much more robust drone. It's larger. It can fly significantly longer. It's got about almost a 40-minute flight time. Wow. But it has 2 sensors, or 2 payloads, 2 cameras in essence. One of them is a 64 power zoom camera, so we can zoom in, so we can keep the drone at a very safe distance where people wouldn't even necessarily know it's there, and we can zoom in and see, is this the person that we're looking for? Is there really something based on the incident that we're operating at that is this what we're looking for? Is this what we need to see? We can identify routes as far as, like, say we're doing a search and rescue operation. We can keep the drone in one position and just use the zoom camera to check out maybe a trail. Is this the best trail to try to hike that person out on?
Sure.
As opposed to now I have to fly it all over the place, and now I can't see it, potentially fly it into a tree or something. So that makes it safer. And then there's a FLIR camera, which is the bulk of the price. So FLIR stands for forward-looking infrared radar, which is, it's a heat camera. It sees heat. So obviously we had talked about, you've been to the Fire Academy for the Citizen Academy, and you've seen what we carry handheld in the fire is the TIC, the thermal imaging camera. It's basically that, except on a much grander scale. So it's a second generation military FLIR camera. It's got zoom capabilities, very high pixel capabilities, so it gives us a very, very clear picture of what's going on. The benefit to that is now we can use it irrespective of daytime, nighttime, whatever the weather's doing, it doesn't matter because that camera sees heat. So if I'm looking for a person, I can find a person, be it in a search and rescue scenario, which we do a lot of outback rescues in Sedona and the greater Verde Valley. If we're looking for a fire, for example, like we talked about, typically this time of year, it's usually a lot drier than it is this week. So there's usually a lot of pollen. We get some wind. Some of those pine trees and the junipers, they'll give off a large cloud of pollen, which can be very deceiving, and it actually really does look like a fire has started. And we get lots of calls on those smoke checks. And so instead of sending out a big wildfire response, we can now send out that drone with a thermal camera. So not only can we see it in a regular camera picture, much like you would see in your cell phone, we can zoom in and see it, but then we also have the heat side of it, the FLIR camera, and we can go, yes, there's no heat, so we can see it. Yes, it looks like smoke, but there's no heat. It's not a fire, it's pollen. We can clear that call rapidly, and we're not sending multiple resources, multiple engines over here, getting them tied up. And now a real emergency happens over here, and now we have to either divert people, extended time, what have you.
I would think that that drone, that's the request is for the $30,000, it would pay for itself within a year. I mean, if you send guys out, 15 times on false calls, I mean, that's resources. So I get where it may sound like a big chunk, $30,000, when you think about, wow, but when you think about what it's saving you in the long run, and it'll be good for several years. I mean, these things, like cell phones, they get out of date, like you say. And for those of you that are on the radio, this in the middle of the table, we have this drone. And if you took the legs off, it would fit in a medium-sized pizza box, including the rotors. And it weighs, what,
this
10
one,
pounds? No,
this
6
one's probably
pounds.
about 2-3 pounds. This
2-3
one's fairly
pounds.
small.
It's very small. And I love the controller. May I touch the controller?
Yep.
So it looks like an Atari with an iPhone stuck on top. It looks like a Game Boy kind of thing with an iPhone. It's what our kids look like right now when they have their Game Boy in their hands and their cell phone in front of their face. It basically looks like a cell phone with some antennas. So that's the equipment that we have sitting here. This one is a small one?
Correct.
Okay.
This is definitely one of the smaller ones. There's several companies that make much smaller ones. You've probably seen some like the backpack ones that they're making now. Garmin makes a bunch of small ones. DJI, which is the manufacturer of this particular one, makes a bunch of smaller ones. And there's a plethora of other companies that do.
Right.
So the one we're looking at procuring is DJI. They're arguably one of the largest commercial and professional manufacturers of remotely operated aircraft such as this. So that's the brand that we're looking at. They also, from the research I've done, seem to have the best integration of the payloads, meaning the camera systems. There's some other systems that have just recently come out that are searchlights, where you could have both a camera and a searchlight, a 10,000 lumen searchlight, which would be extremely beneficial for us on night calls, particularly rescues. So a lot of times we can't get DPS Ranger, the actual manned helicopter from the state, to come out and assist because they're busy, maintenance, multiple calls. It's a high in-demand resource. So that, and it's expensive. You're talking, 3 people plus a real aircraft, real fuel, significant cost involved if all we need is aerial illumination. But that aerial illumination could be extremely valuable for us on the ground doing a rope rescue at night in Oak Creek Canyon.
That's true.
So if we can have that platform to fly out so that our techs and our firefighters that are setting up a rope system before they go over the side can see it. I mean, obviously we're going to have headlamps, flashlights, but the more illumination you have around to see what's happening, especially for whoever that firefighter tech is that's going over the side and has to keep their hands on a rope and not rely just on a headlamp, but the whole scene is now illuminated.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because the drone is overhead, it's far enough away that it's not a noise and sight issue.
All right. I can see where that make a big difference. You could fly DPS out so they can hold a flashlight on you, or you could fly one of these little 3-pound things. Makes a difference. I get it. So go to sedonafire.org. Lots of information there for you. We're talking with Marc Howard, firefighter from Sedona Fire. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break. Don't go away.
Situation. the garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Making was a big part of the foundation of what I wanted my children to do and to have fun with.
Growing up in the Bushnell house was like Nutty Professor craziness. I know, that's true.
Getting burned on a hot glue gun, that was okay. You know, burning themselves with a soldering iron, that was okay.
I was 6 when I learned how to solder.
We learned how to paint, we learned how to sheetrock, and all these things had such lasting impact.
I felt that creativity would give them entree into being able to do anything they wanted.
Whatever we showed our dad, it was always the coolest thing in the world to him.
Good ideas are very often considered silly at their onset.
And by that definition, we haven't even really grown up, you know? I mean, the projects have just gotten bigger.
We all make and have fun. Now the question is, why do you make?
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyiMake.org.
And welcome back to Countywide. We're here with firefighter Marc Howard from Sedona Fire. We've got a drone on the table. We're talking about drones and the use of backcountry rescues, smoke checks, fires, looking for people at night. That's going to be really cool. The new one, hopefully, that's coming soon, will have the heat cameras that you can send. That's going to be amazing. Now, can you give us a couple examples on recent calls that the drone has been really valuable for you?
Sure. Actually, one of the first real calls, if you will, that we took our main platform out on was actually a swiftwater call. It was actually down here. We assisted Camp Verde Fire, Camp Verde Marshal's office, and the sheriff's office. There was a vehicle that had tried to cross a low water crossing and got swept downstream and was lodged on a boulder. And when we all showed up, there was 3 people on the roof of a car with water rising. So we were able to use the drone to go, one, see them, obviously get a really good view of them. Were they fairly stable on the roof of the car where they were at, given the circumstances they were in, kind of assess the vehicle, what's around it, does it look, based on what we can see up close now, does it look like it's fairly stable? Where are we at in our risk profile? Do we need to think about sending a ghost swimmer rescue, which is probably arguably one of the most dangerous things we could do, is we're going to put somebody in the water to free swim out to them right now because we think they're about to go downstream, versus we have time to set up rope systems, we have time to set up a boat, those types of things. So we use that to get a good scene, let the incident commander, so he can watch over my shoulder. The other one has a big iPad for the screen, so he can see everything real-time, HD image, just like you'd have on your expensive TV at home. We have a 1080p HD image. He can see what's happening right there. Then we're able to take it up, fly it upriver, so meaning where the water's coming from as it's coming towards us. Do we have any large chunks of debris, big trees, big boulders, anything that's going to come down and impact our rescue operation that's going to either endanger the victims more, endanger rescuers more? And then we can fly it downstream and find good spots for our downstream, what we would call our contingency plan. We're going to set, where are we going to set people with throw bags? Where are we going to set other rope systems and other backup plans in the event that either a rescuer and or a victim goes in the water and goes downstream? And if that were to happen, hopefully we'd be able to use the drone then to keep an overhead eye on where they are as they go downstream so we could recover that person. Mm-hmm. So everyone on that particular call, particularly the incident command team, was pretty impressed with the view. That's something they'd never been able to see before was, hey, I'm standing here. Yes, I can see the car in the water right there, but I can't see around the corner what's coming down the river. We have to rely on, we send a firefighter or a police officer to go hike up there and watch, and then we have to go through whistle blows or the radio, hope we hear it, hope he sees it in time. Now we can just fly this back and forth, and everybody involved in decision making can see what's happening.
Nice.
So it was pretty valuable on that call, and we had a successful outcome. And it was a boat rescue, and we recovered all 3 people safely in the boat.
Nice.
Another incident that this was pretty valuable on. We had a mountain biker in Sedona, this was probably about a year ago. He was on one of the trails, and as he came around the corner, there was basically a cliff that he had no idea was there. And so instead of being able to make the corner in time, he went over the cliff. And it was probably about, best guess would be about a 20-foot fall that he took, and he was stuck on a pretty steep incline. And so we were able to fly the drone up there. The drone got on scene, found the patient before the crews that were hiking in did. We were able to immediately see, hey, you guys are going to need more than just the 3 people we sent up. So we called for more resources, got them coming immediately. So normally what would happen is that initial crew would hike in, they'd go find the patient, realize, hey, we need more stuff, either have to send people back and or then call on the radio and get those other resources dispatched. So that, the time lag of getting all those other things in place to safely recover this person, we saved arguably 25 to 30 minutes because we were able to see with the incident commander, hey, here's what I see, here's the guy, this is what we're looking at. Yep, I think we need these things. We need a rope system, we need more bodies. We need to think about calling Guardian, for example, which is the air medical helicopter out of Flagstaff, get them coming and get them landed, because this person, we can see their injuries, even from this little camera, that this isn't going to be a ground transport to a local hospital. This is going to be, they need to go see a surgeon as soon as we get them out of here, kind of thing.
Wow, and that 20 to 30 minutes could be a matter of life and death in some of these situations.
Correct, and that's just getting the personnel and the equipment we need to the scene. That doesn't take into account the time to actually extricate that person and then remove them back to either an ambulance or an air medical helicopter.
Right. Yeah, there's so much involved in all these rescues, and you respond to quite a few rescues every year.
We do. We do quite a few what we call outback rescues or technical rescue calls all throughout the canyon and the greater Sedona Verde Valley area. So.
Yep. Now, on those, when would you launch a drone and when wouldn't you?
So obviously weather's going to play a big part in it, just like in a manned aircraft. If there's super high winds, if there's low visibility because of snow, rain, smoke, what have you, we're not going to put this up in the air because now you can't see it. Again, that goes back to some of the federal aviation regulations that the 5 pilots that we have trained, they know that these are the rules. Much like flying a real aircraft, they have to go through a pre-flight checklist. Is this thing ready to fly? Is it safe to fly? What's the weather? Are there other manned aircraft in the area? Is there like a big crowd of people? We can't fly it over a big crowd of people. So there's lots of decision points that go into before we actually put this in the air. So it's going to be up to the incident commander to go, hey, we've got a rescue call, a fire call, whatever, let's get the drone coming. Once the drone gets there, then that individual pilot has the regulatory responsibility to determine, is this a safe flight? Can I legally conduct this flight? And so the incident commander makes the request. The pilot has the final authority to say, we can or cannot fly this, and this is why or why not.
Excellent. Wow, there's a lot to think about. It's
There
not
is.
just, hey, let's use the toy and have fun. Let's fly around for the afternoon. It's not like that. And I would just want everybody to know Firefighter Howard is a certified commercial instrument helicopter pilot. So dude knows what he's talking about. Go to SedonaFire.org if you want information on Sedona Fire itself, any one of their 3 stations, the Firewise program, information about drones. Of course, if you want to stop by the station and say hello, you guys are always very welcoming when we want to do that and ask questions, give them a call, anything like that. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll be right back with more Countywide, so don't go away.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made, painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
And welcome back to Countywide. We're talking with firefighter Marc Howard from Sedona Fire. We're talking about drones, the use of drones in rescues and all that stuff. Now, we hear no-fly zones. When there's an incident, you don't fly your drone. If you have a drone at home, the time not to fly it is when something is going on, when there's a rescue, when there's a fire, when there's any sort of event. Now, why is that, Marc?
So as I would imagine most of your viewers have heard, particularly from the Forest Service and the wildfire community, is if you fly, we can't. And that would go for any other incident as well, be it Sedona Fire, Camp Verde Fire, Phoenix Fire, any other agency. So you as the citizen, you have a drone, you go to fly it. What you don't know is that we've called Guardian Air to come in because we're doing an air medical rescue, or we've called DPS to come in and do a short haul rescue. A short haul rescue is where the DPS, the state police helicopter, is going to lower a rope, usually about a 100-foot rope, and we're going to actually hang one of our firefighter paramedics off of it, and they're going to fly below the helicopter to go rescue somebody. The reason why we would not want anybody flying their drone, while it makes really good, pictures on YouTube, we get it. However, sitting right here under the light, this little white, we'll call it about a 1.5 by 1.5 square foot object, is pretty easy to see. If I were to take this particular drone and I go even 25 feet down the hall, this becomes much harder to see. Mm-hmm. Now I take and I lift this 15, 20 feet into the air, and you're looking into a light blue backdrop, this just became invisible. So it becomes very difficult for you to see, and you can rapidly lose track of where it is in space. The other part is, as the pilot coming in and has someone who flies manned aircraft, particularly helicopters, it's difficult to find other aircraft that are the size of large trucks, and much bigger aircraft. It can be difficult to find those as you're flying. And so as a pilot, if someone tells me or I hear that there's drone activity in the area, it's very unnerving because I can't see these. Mm-hmm. I can't avoid them. And a helicopter in particular is a very delicate instrument. An impact with one of these things, even if it's stationary, if I fly into it, typically most helicopters are flying around anywhere from 70 to 100 miles an hour. This hits one of the rotor blades, or it even comes through the plexiglass windshield, there could be a catastrophic outcome to that. So on any incident, particularly, again, where you hear it the most is with the wildfire community, because the pilots can't see it, they're already flying in low visibility, hazardous conditions, the potential for a catastrophic collision the risk is too much. They're going to ground all air resources.
Right.
And so if we have to ground all air resources, that means in the case of a fire, the fire could get bigger. Mm-hmm. Firefighters on the ground they're relying on that aerial retardant drop, aerial water drop, aerial resupply, whatever it might be, now can't get it. Mm-hmm. So now you're placing those firefighters in danger. If it's a victim we're rescuing, we have to cancel the air rescue portion. That could delay that person's care. You've heard the golden hour before. Mm-hmm. Some of these rescue calls take multiple hours anyway, so to delay that person's care could mean they have a much more negative outcome. So bottom line is, while we understand you want to get the good picture, it's not worth it for the potential risk that you're going to place everyone at to fly that, because now we have to go to a different plan.
Right.
And if there are rules, again, the federal aviation regulations, that say if you interfere with a fire, rescue, and or law enforcement operation, you could in fact be arrested and charged with a crime.
There you go.
Not that we want to see people get in trouble. That's not our goal. We'd rather educate and work with people.
Right. So
but
don't do it.
there is that
bottom
repercussion.
line. Absolutely. Keep that in mind. All right. That's all the time we have for Countywide today. Firefighter Howard, thank you for being here. Check out SedonaFire.org. We'll see you again next time.